Hello, welcome to another segment of Veterans Did You Know? My name is Dave Eling, and I'm the director of the Muskegon County Department of Veterans Affairs and the Veterans Service Center. And today I'm very pleased to have a longtime friend, Dennis Cobbler. Dennis, maybe his name is familiar to many of you if you had your eyes checked or need some eye care. Dennis is an optometrist. And he gave up his practice fund. He decided he might want to take it easy. I think he's busier now than he was when he was in his practice. But the veterans connection is Dennis is actually a Vietnam vet, went to Vietnam in country, and he was one of the founding fathers back in the late 80s that got the whole Veterans Service Center concept going in the state of Michigan. And Dennis hired me, as a matter of fact, and he says, are we still paying you? Are you still around? But it's been a long time. But Dennis wore many hats in the community. He's a big gun with the Lions Clubs International. And locally, and the latest project that Dennis has collaborated with was we're married up with the Lions Clubs, with the veterans, and it's the Vets Memorial Park. We're trying to get some stuff done out there. So first off, Dennis, thanks for sitting on the show with me. I appreciate you coming and stuff. And give a little history about you, about your veteran status, and I give them a little tip there. But a lot of people don't realize that doctors and dentists and lawyers were actually in Vietnam. I mean, right out there amongst it. So.
No, I graduated from optometry school in 1966 in Chicago, and I'm originally from North Dakota. It took me 2 days to drive back to North Dakota. 2 days after that, I got my draft notice. So
we want you bad.
Well, I never had to worry about unemployment because, like I said, 4 days after graduation, it was Army time. So I did go into the service through Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas, then went to Fort Bliss, which is in El Paso, and we actually worked at an old an old Air Force base there, Biggs Field, and Army had taken that over, and from there I went to Vietnam, served with the 12th Evac Hospital. We supported the 25th Division and a little bit of the 101st Airborne when they came in, but we were in Cu Chi, and about 7 miles from the Parrot's Beak. And so there a full year and came back to El Paso, but at William Beaumont General Hospital. So
a little better digs than when you left.
Yeah, the hospital is, but there's more inside politics in a big general hospital than it was in the dispensary system that Fort Bliss had. So I did my 3 years and then did some active, inactive reserves, and gave it up after 6 years.
Then, what made you decide? I know the story, but the concept of veteran centers, getting this whole thing started. I mean, you guys were up against some pretty big odds about getting that money and getting the things going, and that was back when veterans weren't probably as popular as they are now.
No, and that's one of the reasons that we initially started the Vietnam Veterans of America Chapter 31 here in town. I got the notice, I think I saw it in the Chronicle, and I went to their first meeting out at the community college, and Dan Irwin was, and Roger, I forget his last name now, but they had the meeting, and I told them, if you're going to do something, I will join, but if you're just going to sit around and do nothing, I don't want any part of it, because I like to stay active. But out of that, we found out that we had two groups of Vietnam veterans, those that needed help and those that were willing to help. And that's where the foundation of this whole thing started, was Chapter 31. I ran into some really good guys I'd never met before, and they were all anxious to get something started. So that's kind of how it started. Home box office, the TV program had a welcome home program, and they were offering money, grants if you could write a good enough proposal. So we had one of the MESC guys who was a non-veteran, but very, very interested in Veterans Affairs.
And he has been.
And still is, and that's John Morgan.
Still writing grants.
Yeah, he's very good. He knows where all the buzzwords are and where to put them. But we got money out of that, and we split it down the middle, and we started with Gene Ross out at the the employment center training, and we did a second shift for veterans, and that went very well. So we put the other money into a fund to maybe put together some kind of an outreach center, very similar to what Massachusetts had. And I did fly out to Massachusetts and find out how they did it. And our concept and their concept were exactly the same without any collaboration. So it was amazing how we were thinking the same.
Yeah.
Theirs is a little different. Massachusetts being a very liberal state, they'll pour money into anything.
Yeah.
And Michigan's a little bit different, as you mentioned. It was very difficult to put together any kind of funding, but out of that came the opportunity to go before the subcommittee at the House with the $1.3 million left residually from the Vietnam Fund. All their fiduciary responsibilities were done, so it was up for grabs, and quite frankly, that's a nice plum. Everybody wanted it,
yes,
but we got it. And we also then went to the Agent Orange, that program. We wrote grants for that, and were funded for one time for $175,000, I believe. But that turned out so well, and we became one of their top 3 programs in the whole country. So they refunded us and refunded us. So we were evidently doing something right. So, and that's where you came into the picture with Muskegon. Down on Terrace, we had the drop-in center, and then another one of our Vietnam veterans, Dayton Parker. He's no longer with us, but Dayton was working, I believe, on a master's program, and he was researching how certain communities funded veterans if they could. Mm-hmm. And he found an old program here that Muskegon County had a vet's millage never ever used. Yep. And that's where it came from, and then you jumped on that, and away we went. So that kind of brings us up to right now. Yeah. A little bit of history, but right now, that's...
And we had, back then we had, Mickey Knight was our state legislator, and Mickey was a big gun for us.
Mickey was one of a kind.
And then Lynn Owen was from the other side of the state.
Another one of a kind, yes.
He was just as feisty, and well, we took trips down to Lansing when they tried to cut the funding, and we stormed the place, and we just made our presence known. And all along as veterans, we always told them, we said, look, we're going to make you guys look good. Mm-hmm. We're not going to do anything that's going to embarrass ourselves, number one, or you as a community. And you know, sometimes you get some politicians, and I always kid around and say the only 2 things a politician really gets is if you got a lot of money to help them out with their campaign, or if you got a big vote of blocks, big block of votes. And as veterans, we probably got the largest voting block, and then maybe next to seniors, and now most of us are seniors.
That's right. That's right.
Besides, so
great power.
Yeah, that's right. Great power is there, and you're on top of that. Well, and I think that the attitude has changed of the public. I think with the first Desert Storm, I think the nation as a whole tried to make atones for the way the Vietnam vet was.
I think
nobody's crying and whining about how we were treated. We get back. That was just the way stuff was in that era. But it was so nice to see the country turn around and really respect the veteran and say, you know, you got to appreciate the warrior. You know, whether you believe in why they went there, whatever else, they were doing what we asked them to do, and they went where we told them to go. And you know, by golly, they deserve something. And so it's vets like Dennis and some of those guys were forward thinkers who got stuff organized, and that was a big thing, is getting vets together and say, you know what, we were trained to do this. We were trained to come together as a group, to work as a team, to make stuff happen, and we did. And from that time to this, Muskegon has been the Muskegon model. The programs like Dennis have the Agent Orange program and the Vet Center program. It's spawned out of the west side of the state. We're pretty proud of that. Mm-hmm. We have a smaller veterans population than the east side of the state, obviously. We always kidded that anything west of Lansing, you know, your hillbillies, you didn't know anything was going on, but we kind of proved the fact that we can set a standard over here. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. We've got to talk about some projects that the Dennis and Lions Club and the vets are working on. It's pretty interesting. You could probably help us out, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.